What's going on, guys? This is the Gainz podcast, bringing you episode 12 of the new decade. I'm Antoine. This is
Roman Long.
And today we're discussing and talking about volume and intensity. What is it good for? You follow the rest. You leave in the comments below what's the answer to that question, and we're not going to tell you. We're not going to give it to you. Anyone born...
Some would say not much.
Yeah, some would say not much, but if you were born in the 2000s, you might not know what that means. So, just Google it, yeah.
Sorry, folks.
So we're talking about volume intensity today. Really great subject. And it's something good for beginners, intermediate, even myself, when it comes to volume and intensity. Back in 2016, after started really lifting when I was 18, 19. So that was 2012. And then when I competed in 2016, it's not until 2016 I started learning more specifically about training and whatnot. So I don't even know if I even told Roman this, but this is when I started learning more volume intensity when it comes to training and how important it is when it actually put things together. So that was I knew of it, knew from it, and kind of had the general consensus, but it wasn't until then I started making sense of it all. So that's pretty cool about this episode. Is there any updates, quick updates? Update for you. You want to throw that out there?
Which one?
Short gains.
Oh, yeah.
Sure. I'm gonna let Roman so he can become accountable for it. Since I'm not gonna make up anything.
All right, folks. So I need to stop procrastinating about the Short Gains podcast. But essentially, what Short Gains podcasts are going to be are abbreviated versions of the Gainz podcast. And we got an awesome episode coming at you. Programming principles. I'm trying to condense it down to a 2 to 5 minute version. I've got a lot of video clips, and I just need to put it together, post it. So be sure to be on the lookout. Program principles, Short Gains, coming at you.
So if you're looking to do the job for Roman, he's offering, I think, $1,000 just on this consulting job. So, let's hear, folks. Roman's got a good sum of money he's willing just to throw at people.
It's pretty much like a small subsidy from what Apple's thrown at us with the Apple podcast. So.
Yeah, let's think about it. We make zero money from here. You're gonna pay someone $1,000 to make a 2 to 5 minute video. Man, I approve. I approve. That's definitely a good rate of return, rate of income. Yeah, everything in it. So, updates for me. After Roman does the Short Gains, I'll probably be doing the Short Gains on another episode, TBD. It's probably going to be whatever the next one was from Programming Principles, which off the top of my head I don't remember. It's crazy that it's getting to that far where I can't remember what episode we're on and which one to relate to, which is a good thing. Also, my training is on a standstill this year. Not really standstill, but shoulder and low back problems. We're going to be just doing body weight movements and not really loading the back at all. So I will keep you updated on that. Not so much worried about it, like I said in the last one. But yeah, so first off, volume and intensity. We'll get back to the main subject of the day. We're going to have Roman define it, and then we're going to kind of go into a little bit more of an explanation on the two. And then we'll give you two viewpoints. Almost similar, pretty much similar, you could say. Yeah, a lot of overlap, a lot of just different definitions also probably. So I'm going to let Roman discuss what volume and intensity is first, and then we'll go into what volume and intensity is.
Booyah. Volume. I have a pretty easy definition for you folks. Volume can get really complicated. People can do a whole bunch of different stuff. They're throwing Newtons at you, and you're like, fake Newtons, isn't that a snack, a candy bar that I have that's supposed to be kind of healthy and nutritious for me?
Newtons?
So
It was a nougat.
I think it's Fig Newtons.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the nougat in like chocolate. All right, go ahead. Sorry.
So volume can be defined as the amount of work performed during working sets, and then an example is reps times sets times weight. So let's say I'm doing 4 sets of squats for my leg day, and I have programmed 245 by 5. That ends up being like 1,200 pounds or something like that. We'll just say it's 1,200 pounds, folks. And you multiply that by 4 sets, 4,800 pounds. Boom, that's your overall volume for that session of squats.
Question.
Yep.
So, interrupting first off, are warm-up sets included in volume?
No. Working sets. So
I knew you said that,
yeah.
working sets. I
No,
just
it's a
wanted to
good
make sure
point. It's a good point.
it's clarified that, like,
Yeah.
if he's doing, did you say 245?
Yeah.
If he's doing 245, if he does a warm-up of 135 for 8 sets, or 8 reps, or even 4 reps, he's not going to include that in the working sets.
Don't count it, because if you're doing 245 by 5, and let's say you do 135 by 8, most likely you can do at least 5 more of that. So it's not within that effective rep scheme. Effective reps is an effective tool or model to a point. And I think this is like a good area where it's where it makes sense. So essentially, not to get too much.
I know. I was trying to not. I was like, is he getting ahead of himself?
Effective reps essentially is like an idea that you only have effective reps like within like 5 reps to failure. All that means is that you have to have a certain amount of intensity, bringing it back. Intensity, Roman. What is intensity? Intensity, we can define that.
Wow, you really saved yourself, Rowan, didn't you?
Proximity to your 1 RM or 1 rep max. So that's very vague. I want to keep it pretty vague.
Yeah, because we're gonna go into it a little bit more.
Yeah, a scale I have is closer to 1 RM, more intense. Further from 1 RM, less intense.
What does 1 RM mean?
1 repetition maximum. So if the most you can do, the most I can do, put in a loaded barbell on my back, throw those 45s on, hit my ass to the ground, jump back up 315 pounds. It's the most I can do. That's my 1 repetition max, or abbreviated 1 RM. You'll see that pretty frequently. And then you might see like a percentage of 1 RM for certain rep sets, etc. That's intensity, folks.
Yeah, and well, thanks for tuning in. We're gonna head out for but so I wanted Roman to define those generically first, because like certain modalities, certain people will, and also you can, like intensity, you can also record differently or progress differently on intensity itself. Sorry, that was bad. That was 3 times. So that's why I wanted Roman to talk about that first, so you get a general idea what it is. Today, though, what I'm going to get into with volume and intensity is the muscle pyramids, or the muscle and strength pyramids from Eric Helms, Andy Morgan, or who else is on there? Alberto Nunez. I think Matt Ogus is on. Is Matt Ogus on there? I don't know. Maybe I'm getting ahead of the. But pretty much the people from 3DMJ. I can't think of the names right now. Obviously, it gets right out of my head as I'm trying to explain it. But pretty much my standpoint when it comes to like volume intensity, I'm going to give you examples from what they suggest or what's suggested out there from them, and then Roman's going to give you a different side of things. That's why in the beginning we talked about there's going to be overlapping, a little bit of difference, a little bit of more different terms and definitions. So, volume. When Roman was saying working sets, working reps, that's total volume. Add it all together, that's your total volume. Boom. So how do you put that into training? You're going to ask that why. You're like, well, yeah, I did Jim Stepani's 3x10 chest workout, and I've been running it for the last 5 years.
Good start.
That's a good, and like I said in the beginning, I started before, like when I was lifting seriously, I didn't really put those two together, but there's always a good amount of volume for each body part, meaning chest, triceps, biceps, shoulders, back, low back, quads, glutes. Well, not really glutes, unless you're bodybuilding, I guess. Calves, hamstrings, quads. I think I said quads and calves twice, but so pretty much their general recommendation for, and this is where it's going to overlap and be different what Roman's about to tell you, but we'll get into that later. But the muscle and strength pyramid suggests 10 to 20 working sets per muscle group or movement. So that means pretty much if you're looking at chest, if you're a beginner, you probably want to start off with maybe if you're doing like 2 or 3 days, say if you're doing chest, maybe split it up to 5 sets, or if you're doing 3, do 3 sets, 4 sets. And that's a good factor because if you're in that 10 sets with chest, that means you're probably going to get growth because you're a beginner, as well as if you were intermittent or novice. Then if you're like, whoa, my chest is growing, but see, the thing is, like, this weight's easy, or I feel pretty recovered when it comes to volume. So I'm going to do 11 sets the next couple weeks. So after you did it for 2-3 weeks on 10 sets, you go to 11 sets. Perfectly fine. So what I want to get at when it comes to volume, which Roman will definitely get more into, volume doesn't consider your outside habits, which we've talked about in a prior episode. Yeah. Volume could differ when it comes to stress, your job, your needs when it comes to like moving or not moving, your mobility probably, I would suggest, and things around that nature. Yeah, nutrition. Nutrition as well. That's like one of the big pictures. So if you're not doing any of those things right, if you hit the minimum 10 sets per week with chest, or 10 movements for chest, you're probably not going to grow. But if you see that maximum was 20 sets, that doesn't mean you can't do more on that. Meaning, if you're a more advanced lifter, like Roman probably could do some movements where he's doing more than 20 sets. And that's totally fine. If he comes back the next week, if he doesn't have so much DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness, then he should be fine. And that's a good determination when it comes to like working out, especially being new or advanced. If you can't put up the same weight with that same volume the next week, you're either not recovered from the workout or something outside of that's not working. Yeah. So that's simple. I wanted to keep it simple with just like the chest movement. And then when it comes to volume itself, and another notation on that before I finish with volume is record how you're feeling, record what you did. Like we said in the last episode with the goals and the New Year's resolutions, record that, see how you're feeling on a scale of 1 to 10. Come back next week. If you're doing 10 chest movements, and by this time the second one comes and your chest isn't fully recovered, maybe do 1 set less. Or if you're recovered and everything's totally easy, I mean, like you feel like you did 10 sets that whole week and you feel perfectly fine, do 1 or 2 more sets the next week or the next couple weeks and just move on from there. Do you want me to get an intensity and then pass it over to you?
Yeah.
Okay. So when I mentioned before or after Roman was finished with the intensity part, through the muscle and strength pyramid, when it comes to the ebook, there are different types of intensity and the way you can record it, depending on if you're doing strength or hypertrophy. Roman and I did discuss last week about this. Like we how we kind of talk like, hey, this is the Gainz podcast. This is something that you could do with any resistance training, but we're going to try to keep it general so you can keep moving forward and not make it so complicated. So keep it strength or hypertrophy, meaning, obviously if you're doing strength sports, strength athlete, hypertrophy athlete, hypertrophy sport, depending on, or mixing the two. intensity is going to be a little bit different when it comes to intensity itself. So some of the different ways to measure is what Roman was saying was a percentage of 1 RM, repetition maximum. So if your max is 315, let's just say 90% is about 295, 300. So if you can do 315 for one, you could probably do 295, 300. And these are all estimated. I used to be really good at math percentages, but I just kind of just go off of what my knowledge is and kind of generalize it. Obviously, you can get more specific, which is if you do record, do that. But if you're at 90, 95%, you could probably do one more if you had the opportunity. Let's just say that's one way of building or trying to determine intensity, as well as a rep max. So, if you see popularity when it comes to CrossFitters, they do a lot of AMRAP reps maxes, which is as many reps as possible. But see, the thing is, obviously, that's a little bit more off subject. I just wanted to say that because I feel like a lot of people know what AMRAP is compared to rep maxes.
Yeah.
Rep maxes will determine, hey, I could bench 225 for 6. But if you progress off that, and you're trying to do progressing off, rep maxes, 225 per 7 would be a new max, a new rep max. And then if you're trying to build the next year, 225 for 8, 225 for 9, that is intensity when it comes to building off the rep max. And last but not least, this is what they note is pretty much RPE, which a lot of people might be familiar. That is rating of perceived exertion. So meaning it's kind of almost like the 1 rep max, percentage. It's all these kind of overlap anyways. And this one is pretty much you're going off what that weight feels like. So say if 315 was max Roman's squat day, and he did 315 and he did 4 reps. That's pretty good.
Decent on my
Yeah. 315 for 4. And let's just say he's got one more in the tank. By the way, RPE goes from 1 to 10, 10 being the hardest, the most difficult weights, 0 being the lesser, the easiest weight you could do. And if he's doing 315 for 4, he's able to do one more. That's pretty much, and that's, we're going off his feels, not his max, not the percentage of max, not rep max. And he says, man, Antoine, I think I could have did 5 right there. Boom, we figured it out. RPE probably is 9. So 10, and to explain that, I probably should have did that in the first place. So 10 is pretty much nothing in the tank. You've gave it your all, boom, that's the highest. It felt heavy, but you got the set perfect. You got the set and reps perfectly. That's RPE 10. RPE 9 is you got one more in the tank. RPE 8 is about 2 or so in the tank. They do, I know some people do 8.5, 9, 9.5. Yeah. But honestly, I think that's too specific, especially when it comes to this podcast. I think we don't need to worry about that.
Where's the half rep point?
Yeah, 9.5. Let's just say Roman didn't, he did 4 of that 315, and he felt like he could do another half rep. Or I think it works better when it comes to 8.5, because if he did 315 for 4, and he could have did maybe 1 or 2 more, that's 8.5, which is weird because 9 is you could do 1 more. So who the heck cares about 8.5? Let's just call it. But anyways, you pretty much, RPE is the last one I want to note when it comes to the pyramid of muscle and strength. So that was the muscle and strength pyramids. Like I said, that's 3DMJ. They have a nutrition and strength books. I'm pretty sure you could buy one or the other, or buy both. The other one's on nutrition. So if you want any other questions on that, let me know. I have bought the books. If you have any questions or if you need help finding it, let me know as well.
Sweet.
Volume and intensity from the RP side.
All right, so we have 3DMJ.
And what about the RL side?
Yeah, it's kind of like
new ebook coming soon. Roman's just gonna take both of it, put it all in a publication, and just sell it, right?
I think our accountants and my kids would be happy about that. All right, so there's a lot of different organizations, groups that have different volume landmarks. These are just two that Antoine and I are big fans of. So he just went over the landmarks given out by 3MJ. Perfectly fine. About 10 to 20 working sets. Probably should start around the 10. Work up to approximately 20 per body part. Group, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. Renaissance Periodization, that is a different organization. Dr. Mike Israetel came out with his own volume landmarks, which are pretty similar but pretty different in their own right. So for the sake of this podcast, I'd like to go over some of the landmarks that you'll hear him talk about. I think I've already thrown some of them out mistakenly in other podcasts. I mean,
effective volume, and you have you're throwing MRV, MRE, in the other podcast, but it's all good.
Yeah. So there's mainly 4 different landmarks. I think he started off with pretty much 2, and he's since expanded it. But the base. And also, is that a sorry to interrupt? Is that a ebook, or is this off what you've learned from RP itself? Yeah, I think it's in RP's Strength and Hypertrophy Guide, I think is what they call it.
Is it an ebook then?
I think so, yeah.
Do they update it?
They do. It actually, I think it was recently updated.
Okay. Yeah, and recently. I forgot to mention too, I only remembered once he started talking, obviously. But the 3DMJ books of the nutrition and strength are the training method. They update those constantly because it's an ebook, and so does RP. So yeah. I think that's a great publication to look at because science and education always needs to be updated. It shouldn't stand still.
True.
So I just sorry to take.
No, you're good. I think they have free resources, or I know they have free resources on YouTube. So if you're strapped for cash and you just want to listen more, and we can include a link to one of them.
Yeah, YouTube's always a free source, and there's so much you can not talk about when it comes to YouTube channel or YouTube because if you make a book,
yeah,
there's no way you can't spill the beans about some of it because you're talking about the person who made it.
And there still is value in buying the book. I haven't purchased the book yet, but I want to, and I'm going to, probably in the near future. But if you buy the book, it goes into my understanding, because I haven't read the book. Clearly, I just stated I haven't read the book. It goes into much greater detail.
Which is always fun.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're really interested, if you want
nuances.
Yeah, exactly.
So the 4 volume landmarks that are outlined are MV, which stands for, it's an acronym for maintenance volume, and that's essentially the minimum amount of volume you can do to maintain the same level of body mass. So let's say I have a big chest and I want to grow the shoulders more.
You always say you have a big chest. Yeah. I feel that's. I love the example. You're Roman's got this massive chiseled Greek chest. You should see it in person.
So I want to maintain the chest, but I want to work more on the lateral and the rear delt to fill out the shoulders a little bit more and give me more of a wider frame. So what I do is I bring my chest volume down to MV, and then I bring the lateral delt and the rear delt up to, let's say, MEV, which I'll describe in a moment, and work that up through MAV, and if you can tolerate it, up through MRV. And these are actually going to be different for each person. We can go over what these landmarks look like, but I think taking the template and then using that to craft your first program and then going from there is a great start. But your volume landmarks might look totally different from the way that they're described by RP, because it's mainly based off of years of experience and seeing what the average client's volume landmarks look like. So I just alluded to MEV. What does that stand for? It's minimum effective volume. So if you want to grow a body part, but you want, let's say you have a lot of business trips coming up, a lot of family obligations, you can't dedicate an exorbitant amount of time to the gym, but you still want to grow your biceps. So then you can take your biceps to the minimum effective volume, and they'll still grow they will grow. It will, albeit it will be slow, but they will grow. You will see weight progressions in the gym, which will give you confidence that they are growing, and that it keeps you confident, like happy to continue your progress with your program. Minimum effective volume would be the smallest amount of work that you can do or volume that you can do that will still get you gains. Moving on from that, the next step up would be maximum adaptive volume. That's essentially like what Dr. E12 might call like the sweet spot, or the area where you don't necessarily grow the most, but you get the most bang for your buck. Meaning that the amount of volume or work that you put in will significantly grow those muscles, but you won't have the side effects of MRV. At least you shouldn't, as long as you're progressing them sensibly throughout your program and deloading wherever possible. So the next, or the upper limit of volume is MRV, or maximum recoverable volume, and that's essentially identified as the maximum amount of muscle you can grow and tolerate that amount of volume. Anything above that, you actually might have a dip in strength and potentially even size if you keep pushing the envelope. So let's say you were hammering 30 sets of curls for 2 straight years, and you actually noticed that your biceps were shrinking somehow. You weren't able to do as much weight as you were in month 3 of this 24-month journey. So you probably way overshot your MRV in this instance, and it probably makes far more sense to take an extended deload, jump back into it, start somewhere around like the 12 bicep movements per week, and then progress it from there. So MRV is the most that you can recover from.
So CT Fletcher was wrong about doing arm day every day.
Yeah, arm day every day, or squat every day.
No, CT Fletcher, he said, how I got these 22s? Doing some motherfucking curls every single damn day.
Some people could, if you did 3 sets.
Yeah, 2 sets per day.
I think most people could probably, or at least your average person could probably tolerate that. But of course you want to add in progressive overload, et cetera, other programming principles that we've talked about. So you might be tempted from hearing this podcast to jump right into MRV, and I would caution you not to do that. And the reason why is that MRV could way overshoot your MRV. So let's say you find out that to maximally grow your quads, you need to get 20 working sets in per week. 1, you might not be going intense enough to grow them because of all the volume you have to withstand. 2, if you're just going full balls to the walls and just trying to tear your quads off of your femur, you may be overshooting your maximum recoverable volume. And it's not to say that there aren't any inherent risks in doing that. The closer you get to MRV, the closer you get to some degree some degree of injury. So MRV may be something that you want to play with from time to time, but you need to slowly build from that. And the most sensible program would probably progress from MEV in the body parts that you want to grow up through MAV, and then maybe possibly flirt with MRV before you have a fairly substantial deload, and then you work back up. That way you can take advantage of the supercompensation effect, and you mitigate the risks involved in overshooting your volume landmarks.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Do you want to go over intensity?
Yeah. So.
Or do you want to? Is there anything different or?
Not really. So I think most programs, if you were to take the volume landmarks laid out by RP, they'd probably say that anything shy of 5 reps from failure, you probably just shouldn't do or include in your calculated volume per week. And what you should essentially be calculating is volume load is very important, especially depending on how nitty-gritty you want to get into the details, but you're really mainly looking at working sets. So that 20 working sets that Antoine had mentioned, that's for most body parts, that's about the maximum recoverable volume as well. Some people claim that they can sustain upwards of 25 plus for back. That it's kind of skeptical because then you do run into potential intensity issues. So where you should probably start a program is at that MEV level for most body parts that you're trying to grow, and then between 2 to 3 reps from failure. So RPE 7 or 8, or 2 to 3 RIR, or reps in reserve. Some people would definitely debate that, but I think the consensus of information is pretty clear that a set of 2 reps from failure closely mimics a set 2 failure, especially for compound movements. So taking multi-joint, like the squat, for example, and reduces the potential risks, such as being trapped by the bar, getting some type of an injury, etc. There's psychological harm that you can cause yourself, which if you've ever got an injury from lifting and you have some sort of like self-doubt when you get under the bar, that's really what I'm talking about. The only way to really work through that is kind of lifting more, which will give you continued confidence in yourself and your ability. But yeah, probably starting at about 2 to 3 reps in reserve, or RPE 7, 8, and then working up before your deload, maybe flirting with that RPE 9 to 10, or working up to failure, except for possibly compound movements like the squat. I would say squat, you should probably not get too much above 9 unless you have a very, very trusted training partner. Bench, as long as you have like a decent training partner, you can push pretty close to RPE 10 towards the end of your training. I tend to push the limits on bench quite a bit, and I've seen some good success. I've also had some like nicks and bruises from it because I've beaten myself up a little too much.
Yeah, and then when he's talking about like RPE 9 for some things, like especially a squat or deadlift, I mean, we could probably have an episode about this too as well, but I mean, I honestly, for a person that's competed in one powerlifting competition and then maybe another with Roman this year, I wouldn't suggest it too much unless you're new, because the thing is, you just keep running into that problem where it gets into fatigue, your central nervous system, all that good stuff. So you definitely don't want to push those limits, because that stuff would, like he was saying, your head's probably not going to be there for the next couple of sessions, and it's just going to be no good. So I wouldn't suggest it. Yeah. Maybe some people would, but I don't think I've ever seen too much benefits besides you saying with bench, which is like one of the 3. And then also like as you could see, it did have some different terminology, what Roman and I were talking about when it comes to volume and intensity, which like that's why I like the RP strength. That's what I like about like their volume portion when it comes to training, because it actually shows like different modalities within, like, let's just say the 10 to 20 sets. Yeah. It shows you your maintenance, shows your minimum recovery, your maximum, and it gives a better knowledge when it comes to a more seasoned athlete, and you can utilize that a little bit more, in my opinion. And I think the 3DMJ one was a little bit more general. They probably could definitely talk. I mean, they're coaches too, so they probably know. Like they definitely know. Not probably. They definitely know what those terminology is, because like 3DMJ. I mean, Eric Helms talks to Mike Israetel. Like, they definitely know each other, and they've talked to each other. They've seen each other, and they probably studied some of the same stuff. So, in reality, to sum it up, just look at your total volume and your intensity. Make sure you're getting the effective dose of volume, intensity where you're actually trying. You're getting close, like somewhat close to failure, so you're getting that growth. And kind of just record your progress when it comes to recovering itself, because that's probably the one main aspect of it. So yeah,
I'd say to close or summarize. If this is like way over your head and you're like, I'm just looking for a place to start from like a novice or beginner standpoint, 3DMJ, like start with 10 working sets per muscle group and
go from there.
Pretty much go from there. Yeah. if you're going to take notes, which we highly recommend,
Yeah.
I'd say be as detailed as possible. You don't have to write a novel, but if it's something like, oh man, the front of my shoulder has just been killing, maybe that's a good time to take a deload, essentially like a week off the gym, or like where you cut your working the amount of volume by like 50%, and then jump right back in, maybe with a slightly lesser amount of volume. So let's say you worked up to 13 working sets for your chest, and it just seems too much. Like the front of your delt is like very fatigued. Your triceps, your elbows are hurting, something along those lines. Probably a good time to like take that deload. So 10 sets I think is pretty reasonable for most people to start in at. You probably want to do it twice a week if you can, and that would look like 5 working sets per muscle group that you're trying to train. And then I'd say when it comes to intensity, just train hard. I wouldn't worry too much about like, how close am I to failure? Like that'll be a skill that you can build, and you can start taking notes. Like, I think I was here, but I could be here, and then you give a range. Yeah. Well, now you're starting to work on that skill.
Yeah, and then also like to, finish off and get to the next one. There's been a pretty much a lot of conversations going back with volume and intensity, but you have to stay tuned for that next one.
Yeah, maybe we'll have to have like a debate or something about like volume and intensity.
Awesome, guys. Well, thanks for tuning in. Please follow us, like, comment, subscribe. Tell your moms, tell your fathers, tell your brothers, your sisters.
Your coworkers.
Peace.